Hey guys, real quick before we get into today's episode, I have a tiny favor to ask you. In all of my infinite wisdom, I somehow managed to get my YouTube channel completely erased. Now, was this my fault? Yes, it was. Am I still incredibly salty about it? You better believe it. So, if you haven't already, please consider hopping over to my YouTube channel. It is now under the name Rich Girl's Guide with Kirby and hitting subscribe. Most of my listeners actually come from YouTube, so I am trying to gain back my 200 plus subscribers as quickly as possible. Thank you so much to the 20 of you that have already subscribed. Please feel free to steal your spouse's phone, your friend's phone, even dear old granny's phone, and subscribing them as well. At this point, I'm not above anything. And thank you so much for listening, and let's get right into today's episode. Reddit asked, and I'm answering. Let's jump right into it with question number 1. If you have the money for 20% down, does it ever make sense to only put 3% down? You don't need to tell me how mortgages work, lol. Let's say I'm buying a $600,000 house and I have a $120,000 saved for the down payment. Does it ever make sense to put down just 3% and invest the rest? I just ran the numbers for my current house, and after less than 3 years, I would have had $16,000 more even after paying PMI. Okay, this is a great question. So, for those of you who don't know how mortgages work, essentially you are asking the bank to lend you money to pay for a home, since most of us don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars just lying around to purchase a home with straight up cash. The bank expects you to put down 20% of the asking price, which in this case is $600,000. So, a 20% down payment is going to be $120,000. If you don't have 20% to put down, depending on the type of loan, you might be able to put down as little as 3%. The upside here is that you can move forward with purchasing a home without having a ton of cash on hand. Although I will say this is generally reserved for folks who don't have the cash on hand. The downside to only putting a small percent down is that you are going to have to pay a higher monthly mortgage since you are going to have a larger loan. And your lender, aka the bank, is going to charge you PMI. Now, PMI is private mortgage insurance, and this is essentially insurance on you, the buyer, in case that you don't pay your mortgage month over month. So not only will you be paying more in monthly principal and interest because you have the larger loan amount, you will also have the added PMI payments, which will vary depending on your loan amount, but you can expect to pay at least a couple $100s a month. So with all of that being said, if you have the cash to put down 20%, but you want to know if you would be better off investing that money, first answer these 2 questions. Is the interest rate on your mortgage lower than the interest rate you can expect to receive on your investments? If the answer is yes, then it might be advantageous to invest the extra money and opt for the smaller down payment. For example, if your mortgage is 5%, but you can expect a 10% interest rate on your investments, then it might make sense to pay the PMI for a few years until you reach that 20% equity threshold and reap that 10% interest from your investments. Now, before you get too excited, let's move on to question number 2. Are you planning to move within the next 5 years? If you're planning to move within a relatively short time span, you may want to think about whether or not you will have enough cash on hand to purchase a new home in the case you have to sell your home for a loss. Let's say, for example, you purchase the $600,000 home and you only put 3% down, which is $18,000. That means you have a mortgage of $582,000 and let's call it 5% interest. After 5 years of paying your mortgage every month, you will have paid $47,557 in principal, meaning you still owe $534,403 to the bank. If the housing market has gone down and you are only able to sell your home for, let's say, $550,000, after you pay back the bank, you are left with only $15,557. And that's not even taking into account any home repairs or realtor costs. If you do have to move and are forced to sell your home for a loss, will you have extra money from other places to buy a new home? Or potentially even pay off the remaining balance of your home if you have to sell your home for a loss that exceeds the equity you built in your home? As long as that investment money you put away is accessible, aka it's not in a retirement account or some kind of illiquid investment like tied up in a CD, and using that money for a new home is not going to put you in a bad financial place, then you still might opt for putting the extra cash into investments rather than putting it down on your home. Whew, that one was a doozy. Let's look at one more question. Where do I start? I'm a 33-year-old single dad with a 15-year-old son. I work and go to school full time. I'm a 33-year-old single father, mother not in the picture, who works full time and goes to school full time. Now that my son is 15 years old, I went back to school last year majoring in computer science. I'm barely making ends meet. I have an index universal fund and also college fund for my son. Where do I start? I want to start investing and be smart with my finances. Any advice is appreciated. Okay, first off, let me just say kudos to you for stepping up and raising your son while simultaneously going to school. You are setting such an amazing example for your son, and whether or not he voices his appreciation now, like most 15-year-olds probably don't, you better believe that this will serve him later on in life. Now for some tough love. I am so glad that you are trying to change the narrative by setting up a college fund for your son, but if you are not financially stable yourself, you need to stop contributions into that account immediately. Now, this does not apply to birthday money or money from relatives that are specifically for your son. Obviously, those can continue to go into that college account. But any money that you yourself are putting in, whether it's on a monthly basis or sporadically throughout the year as you can, you need to stop those contributions. What happens if you are suddenly unable to work and you have no emergency fund to fall back on? What happens if you finish school, are unable to find a job in your field, and you're now strapped with paying back student loans without the increase in pay? What if you are forced to retire at 65, but you don't have enough money in your retirement accounts to sustain yourself in retirement? Your son is going to feel obligated to help you in any of these cases, but they may have been avoided by putting yourself first and making sure that you have your finances in order. So the first step is to stop the college savings. Next, you need to save up at least $10,000 in an emergency fund. Put that into a high yield savings account and then focus on beefing up your retirement accounts as much as possible. The good news here is that you are still young. So at 33, you still have decades of compound growth ahead of you. So once you can start socking away at retirement savings, I would maybe perhaps opt for more growth-oriented equity funds. And I would steer clear of like the fixed income, the conservative funds for now, while you're really trying to beef up your accounts. Now, once you finish your computer science degree, I would really hit the ground running. Keep living how you are right now, even if your income doubles. So basically living below your means, and start putting away 20% into your retirement accounts. You are also going to have extra time on your hands since you're finished with school. So if you were so inclined, you may even pick up a second job and just throw all of the money that you make from that second job into your emergency fund and your retirement account. Here's the other thing. Your son is 15, so you still have 3 more years until he theoretically will go to college. In 3 years' time, if you can fully fund your emergency fund and start to get caught up on your retirement savings, there's nothing saying that you can't make a deal with him. Maybe if he pays for 2 years of community college and continues to live at home with you, that you will cover the next 2 years at a state school. I knew plenty of people at my college that went this route, and they ended up paying so much less for school over that 4 or 5 year period while simultaneously building a really good work ethic. They were also the ones that always went to class. They never skipped anything. They knew that they were there for a reason. Whatever you ended up deciding to do, just make sure you start with 10,000 in an emergency fund in a high yield savings account, then 20% of your income into retirement. Look at those index funds and ETFs that are growth oriented and have lower fees. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. Let me know if you like this format and want me to answer more of your questions. You can drop a comment below or submit a question anonymously through the link in the description. I'll catch you next Monday for a brand new episode. Later, rich girls.